Hi, folks. This is Louis Hertham, the original Peter Abernathy. Hell is empty and all the devils are here on the Shat on TV Westworld podcast with Roger, Gene, and Big D.
Welcome back to Shat on TV Westworld, the unofficial podcast companion piece to the hit HBO series Westworld. I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons. Alongside me are my two co-hosts, Ash.
Hi, y'all.
And Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And this is our Instacast edition where we look back on this week's episode and provide our immediate reactions to the episode. This week's episode was Season 4, Episode 5, Zhuangzi. Gang, what'd you think?
So, I feel like I'm at like a tennis match or like I'm playing like ping pong where like I'm getting hit back and forth to like two major extremes because like last week, I loved last week. I thought it was awesome. I got so excited for the rest of this season based off of last week. And then this week happened. And I thought this episode was boring. And the bigger crime than it being boring for me is that I felt it was just really obvious. Like I wasn't really surprised by anything in it. And I think the easiest way that I can explain this episode felt like a CBS show. No. And not some HBO like big budget show. And here's the deal. CBS shows are fine. I loved Criminal Minds. I thought it was a great show, but I don't want to do Shat on Criminal Minds because it's a pretty obvious show on its face. And that's what this kind of felt like to me. And it didn't feel like Westworld, which I know I sound like a broken record because on episodes 1 and 2 of this podcast, I said that this doesn't feel like Westworld. And this again didn't feel like Westworld. And I just feel like they're wasting our time with some of these scenes, like the whole Charloris dance-a-thon, like it just didn't hit me. I am really surprised by the misstep after last week because I thought we would kind of be like on like a barrel roll through unto the end. Now, I did like the cold opening. I thought the man in black getting to be scary was fun. And I did really like the Christina waking up part with Teddy. I thought that was really cool. But the rest of it, meh. I just think it's some crazy ideas, some crazy choices, and not a whole lot of payoff.
I can't believe you didn't like the Charlotte Dance-a-thon. As a dancer, I thought you would appreciate that they're keeping dancers employed.
Well, I'm telling you, I don't care. If I'm there and I have the parasite, you could not get my body to dance like that. Mine would have been an ugly outlier.
I kept thinking about that throughout the episode when they freeze people like frozen mid-stride. How long can a human hold that pose? They're not robots. They're going to fucking fall. You tell me to stop mid-stride, I'm falling over. I guarantee it. I don't care what kind of parasite I have in my body.
Yeah, my legs would shake. I'd be struggling even when frozen.
But to clarify, we're not saying this is a bad show overall. And what Ash is saying is actually praise of episode 4 because we got reveals in episode 5. And we got reveals in episode 4. And the way they were presented in episode 4 was so enjoyable because of the style in which they were presented and the pacing with which they were presented. And episode 5 gave us reveals that were A, more obvious, and B, presented in such an obvious fashion. There was so much exposition, so much people talking back and forth. And as you said, we weren't fans of some of the earlier episodes in the season. I think this is what happens when you have too many writers with drastically different styles working on a show like Westworld. Like you said, a CBS show, that's fine. Star Trek, that's okay. You take different writers and you have them take the same characters and put wildly different spins on them. It's actually fun. I think it's a great way to approach a TV show like Star Trek, right? Or like Criminal Minds. In Westworld, we need consistency in pace. We need consistency in tone and consistency in the level of exposition used. This is a Lisa Joy episode. It's got her fingerprints all over it. And we haven't had one since season 4, episode 1. And I liked her season 1 episodes. I don't know what happened to her since then. And the guys on Real Spoilers, our friend Kevin Brackett over there, talked about this with Thor Love and Thunder, right? He's like, we love Guardians of the Galaxy. We see Thor Love and Thunder, but it's not James Gunn running the Guardians, right? It's Taika Waititi, who is very talented himself. But he just doesn't get Guardians. He doesn't run them right. And I think in the same sense, this season in Lisa Joy's hands, those episodes, we could just expect them to be stinkers.
Well, I think you've really hit on something that I hadn't thought about with your Star Trek analogy and kind of continuing my Criminal Minds, which is that Star Trek, Criminal Minds, they had 20 plus episodes per season. They had all of this time to explore these multifaceted approaches to these characters. This is 8 episodes. That's it. We get 8 hours, not even if you consider all of the junk that's involved. So like 40 minutes a pop, 8 times is all that we get. We just don't have time. It's falling under the weight of too many perspectives. And let's stick with the metaphor of the show. It's too many loops trying to be written by too many different park like narrators. And it's just making the world not make sense.
So for me, I came into this episode, I was excited. I thought like you did after last week. I was really looking forward to this episode. And I can feel the schizophrenic nature that you guys are talking about. And I found myself realizing that there's 2 different types of Westworld. There's the Westworld I like and the Westworld I can do without. The opening question I found myself really intrigued by. I like the idea that Charloris is being confronted with what's next. You know, she has accomplished the impossible. It's like the dog. If the dog catches the car, what's it really going to do with it? And she's facing that question now, where Charloris has become what she hated the most. She's won. She's achieved ultimate power. She runs the world, and she is bored. She's on the mountaintop. There's no more mountains to climb. I found that interesting. The idea of how will hosts transcend to the next level? How will they break free from their creator's shadow? Because right now, the hosts have done nothing to differentiate themselves from their creators. This looks like what New York would look like 23 years after, you know, the robot human disagreement or the kerfuffle or whatever the minor war we were calling it was. This looks like a normal progression. I want to see that the hosts are going in a direction that you would never predict. But because they are highly intelligent, they're going to follow their own blueprint. Then there is the Westworld where I'm like, let me get back to that question. There's a lot of poorly executed action scenes and illogical set pieces. Gene, they're in the desert. They're going to find an outlier. At what point did they transition from desert gear and helicopters, we got to go, into a luxury yacht to then infiltrate Manhattan?
Okay, clearly you weren't listening to Jay, because when they arrived in New York, he said, we got to go get her before they do, or she's as good as dead. So the fastest way to get from Nevada to Manhattan is by boat.
Okay, because you know there's tunnels. They could land like maybe in like New Jersey, and maybe those tunnels aren't there.
Also, it's not just like any fucking boat. It's not like
it's a hot ass boat.
It's not like they're using like Navy SEAL rafts and shit. Like this is like an Elon Musk yacht. It's beautiful.
Well, and I mean, let's also remember that they're like literally running through the streets of New York completely armed, going like, go, run! Like, of course, everybody is going to see them and know where they're going. Like, it's
but
very frustrating.
And was this the first time you've gone? They've led us to believe it's not the first time. Wouldn't you be expecting it's like red light, green light, everybody freeze? Okay.
It's very
okay, we can run again. We can run again. You know, and Gene, when we had that slide move for no apparent reason, I could feel your head about to explode. It felt like me playing Call of Duty Drop Zone with you on Twitch, and I just would slide around. I couldn't control my player. The action scenes leave a little bit to be desired.
Absolutely. And once again, I know this is the 5th Instacast we've done this season, but if you're sitting there on YouTube, if you're sitting there listening on your iPod and you're thinking, wow, these guys are complaining a lot, this is our one chance during the week to do this. So indulge us. This is our opinions. This is the Instacast. We just watched the episode. It's been just a few minutes since we watched it, and these are our immediate thoughts. But we are going to get into some actual topics that we're going to do during the deep dive, which comes out on Tuesday. And of course, the Telegraph comes out on Friday, and you can write in your thoughts on the episode, whether you liked it, whether you didn't. You can write us, hosts@shatontv.com, or leave us a voicemail by going to shatpod.com/TV and using the SpeakPipe feature. We'd love to hear your opinions. If you loved it, let us know why. Maybe something you loved about it we missed, and we can hear that and help us appreciate the episode a little better. Maybe you understood some parts of it that we missed. That would be great as well. And if you hated it, Dane, I'm looking at you. We want to hear about that too. And speaking of the deep dive, I want to get into some topics we're going to cover on Tuesday's deep dive. For me, it's just going to be an extended explain me this. Kind of some of the things we talked about and some other ones. I want to bring up every absolutely wacky choice that was made in this episode. And maybe as a group, we can attempt to think of a reason why it would make sense. Like we mentioned, the cause arriving by boat, Charloris having control of an entire city, but really bad security, how the fuck humans can hold poses for like 15 minutes. Aside from that, a brief look into transcendence and what that's all about. And of course, the virus that's been mentioned on this episode, explaining how both seem to work.
Yeah, I mean, I think I want to look specifically at a few things that we learned about this world in this episode. So, the power of the tower, right? Like we know now that there are certain people who can see the tower. There are certain people that can't. We know that this is kind of a marker of the outliers. And so I want to talk about who can see the tower and how does Christina go from not seeing the tower to seeing the tower at the end of this episode, because she's awakened in a way. And to that end, I want to talk about how the outliers wake up throughout this new world order that we see. And then finally, I also want to talk about why the hosts are coming here, because we get a little bit of an idea from Charloris and her conversations with the Man in Black about how this is like kind of like the last like hoorah, like fuck yeah, let's do whatever the hell we want kind of experience for these hosts. And I want to talk about why they come, and I want to talk about the rules or the lack thereof that Man in Black talks about. Because one thing that I'm hoping that we get a little bit more information about is the more they talk about New York, it feels like New York is separate from the rest of the world. It feels like it's someplace special. And I'm hoping they get to show us what the rest of the world looks like other than just the condemned lands. Because I do think that there is some information left on the table, let's say. And if we talk about these things, at least it gives us some connection to some other episodes. And thank God Bernard's back next week. So hopefully we have some more meaty stuff to talk about.
What I want to look at here is some loops. You know, we just love our loops. We're starting to see that the hosts are having problems similar to the way that humans had with their hosts. So it seems like we're replaying, again, everything that's gone wrong. Some of the outliers, we have hosts that became outliers, and how Charloris is trying to solve this. And she goes through issues that they're having, where hosts are becoming suicidal, where we've had 38 instances of hosts that are behaving badly, to where she seems a bit lost. So I think we might be able to tell where the story is going by finding the parallels between the humans in season 1 and 2 and where we are now with the hosts in a superior role in season 4. So I'll start with that, and I'm sure it'll bleed into something else.
So that sounds like plenty for the deep dive, but we are open to other topics. So if you get in your email or voicemail very quickly, we can consider it for Tuesday's deep dive. Again, you can email us, host@shatontv.com, or leave us a message at shatpod.com/TV using the SpeakPipe feature. If there's something you wanted explained or you feel could bear some more research, we'd love to hear it. That concludes this week's episode of Shat on TV Westworld Instacast. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat on TV. On Facebook, just search for Shat on TV Podcasts. The website is shatpod.com/TV. You can email us, host@shatontv.com. And wherever fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Pandora, Spotify, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe. And if you stop by iTunes, please leave a 5-star review. That helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-hosts, Ash and Big D, I'm Gene Lyons. Be sure to join us Tuesday for the Westworld Deep Dive.